Hi, everyone. Welcome to Coursera's annual conference in 2023. I'm Rupal. I lead University and Industry Partnerships for India and APAC for Coursera, and I'm delighted to be moderating this panel. Folks, so in higher education hallways around the world, we often talk about how with online education, we can make an impact in the lives of millions of learners. In India alone, we talk about how we want to increase our gross enrollment ratio up to 50% by 2035, add about 35 million new learners by 2035. But at the core, at the heart of all of these conversations is a real live learner. It's a real learner with real hopes, aspirations, obstacles, and realities. And I'm really excited for us in this conversation to talk about building the future of learner-first degrees. How do we really think about learners at the core? So folks, we're going to spend the first 45 minutes investing in a discussion, and then we'll open up for some Q&A in the remaining 15 minutes. Feel free to share your questions and answers. We have moderators on the back who are looking at your Q&A and who are going to feed your questions to us. And we're looking forward to an engaging and lively conversation today. So with that, I'd love to pass it on to our incredible panelists here. And I'd like to request you all to quickly introduce yourself and follow your introduction by sharing what does learner-first degrees really mean for you. Sam, how about we go first with you?
Thanks, Rupal, and hi everybody. I'm delighted to be here. I'm Sam Brenton. I'm Director of Online Education at the University of London. The University of London has a long and proud tradition of educating people all around the world at a distance. And we have several degrees and many short courses in our successful partnership with Coursera. So we're driven by an access mission to extend opportunity to people all over the world. So for us, traditionally, I think learner-first degrees have mainly been about breaking down barriers to access and making the learning fit around people's lives rather than the other way around. But, you know, as time moves on, we're also thinking about what the next phase of learner first really means for us. And I'm sure we'll get into that discussion today. But pleased to meet you all.
Great. Let's pass it on to Professor Deb.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. It's been a pleasure to be part of this panel. I'm Professor Debmallya Chatterjee. I'm a professor and the department head for Operations Supply Chain at SPJIMR Institute of Management Research. And I'm leading the initiative, the online program initiative at SPJIMR. SPJIMR as an institution has always been known in the international and, of course, in the Indian market in providing quality education, quality managers to the market. And in this online first and learner first, the philosophy behind this whole thing has been quite a decade back at SPJIMR, where we looked at how can we develop students that can go directly into the market and start interacting with people and add value to organizations. So that was the whole philosophy behind coming up with the important curriculum that we offer. Today, when we are looking at the online version of the program, we are basically trying to reach out to the audience that are basically not getting the opportunity to come and study at the premise physically. And it's not the talent that they don't have, but it's the constraints because of which they're not able to do so. So SPJIMR wants to reach out to those people and make them part of this mainstream quality managers that it is producing over last so many decades. Thank you.
Right. And for all of you logging in, well, Professor Deb very, very quietly snuck in there that we'll be launching our online PGDM with SPJIMR today, and we're very, very excited to do that. Passing it over to you, Rajiv. Please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rajiv Tandon. I work as CEO of BITS Pilani's Work Integrated Learning Division, a very interesting division which focuses on continuing education needs of working professionals. We are perhaps India's largest when it comes to formal engineering education for working professionals, and we work with almost 9 industry verticals. Frankly, Rupal, when this term learner first came up in the Coursera invite to me, I said first the word itself evokes a very different kind of emotion. Certainly different from saying learner oriented, because I think both academics as well as administrators have so many priorities going on. This question, this word tells us to focus back on something for which we really exist. So this was a great word. Okay. And I was also thinking aloud when this question came in, that while top institutions, good institutions, take a lot of pride in what kind of work we have done in ensuring that our learners succeed, but at the same time, when you reflect, that there is a huge gap which still exists, and we need to do so much to ensure that that learner centricity is something which is maintained. For me, there are basically 2 things which come to my mind when I think of learner first. Number one, it comes all about giving choices to learners. In fact, I was recently talking to a few students, trying to refresh my own mind with their own thoughts, and they said there are too many restrictions. So I would say all the 7 question words of the English language, what, why, when, how, where, all those words, we need to give choices. So giving more choices itself takes us very closer to the learner first. And the second most important element, which I feel in a learner first degree, is our complete obsession with the outcomes which the learners want. And my God, the variety of outcomes people expect these days from education is really mind-boggling. So whether it's learning outcomes or career outcomes or life outcomes, sometimes I think even after life outcomes, there's something which people are expecting from their education to really give it to them. So these 2 things, primarily I feel are prime most when we think of learner first degrees.
Great. And Rajiv, that's the perfect segue to Thiru, thinking about outcomes and obsession with outcomes and choices. Go ahead, Thiru.
Thanks, Rupal. Great to be part of this wonderful panel discussion. I am Thiru. I head learning for Infosys. And essentially, if I look at myself in this panel, I am the consumer of the providers that we have here in the panel, from the universities and someone who's providing degrees and everything. And the underlying problem, which obviously the industry always talks about, is how do we make sure that the students coming out of the academic career, how well they are ready for the industry ecosystem, right? Campus to corporate movement. And for me, learners first, I think, is something which Rajiv just a little bit alluded to. How do you put the learners or the students at the center of everything? How do you make sure that the typical thinking around fixed schedules, fixed learning rules, fixed stack of what you call learning content, learning material, how do you make it kind of adaptive? And then how do you make sure that the learners get the value based on what they know in the market, what is happening with the disruptions that are happening in the market, but yet leverage the entire ecosystem that a university or the college provides in making me ready for industry. So the first important element is, how do you make sure the important element of understanding the concept of lifelong learning? I think that is the first step of a learner's first degree that you need to create. The second step, I feel, is around how do you make sure that your entire academic career, I'm just obviously telling this from the lens of corporate, but how do you make sure when you talk about a degree, the learner has the flexibility to do what they want and how they want, in the way that they think they can accelerate their own learning based on their pace and things like that. Typically, we have always heard 4-year graduate program, 2-year master program. Can they complete it in 2 years if they can? And if that is the case, that already shows that, these are students who are able to kind of bring their own adaptability and learnability. And that is what actually will help us from a corporate perspective. So Learner's First degree for me is all about skills and their own ability to adapt and demonstrate their learnability. And that is what will help us, because for us, the industry is continuously evolving with so many disruptions. And the only thing that helps us from our employees when we look at talent is their ability to constantly skill, upskill, and reskill. And that's what I would like to see as a Learner's First degree. Whatever can demonstrate these attributes of learnability and lifelong learning, and that combined with their own ability to learn the way they want, is what we would like to see.
Right, Thiru, and even in, the first time you and I spoke about it, you really said, hey, you hire for skills and learnability. And that has to be adaptable as technology evolves. Sam, I'm curious, as we build off of Thiru, we launched the University of London Bachelor's in Computer Science in 2019. It's almost been 5 years. And here we are thinking about what the future looks like. I'd love for you to ground us in reality and reflect a little bit about what makes the University of London Bachelor's in Computer Science really learner first, and how has it evolved in the last 5 years? Has something evolved? What are you really seeing?
Thank you. So, yes, the Bachelor's in Computer Science that we have with our academic partners, Goldsmiths, on the platform was the first undergraduate degree on Coursera. And we wanted to design it from the outset for maximum accessibility. So, for example, we have a number of kind of entry ramps into the program. You can study on a Google or an IBM certificate, and if you pass that, you automatically get entry to the degree, and you get credit exemption. You can apply for an opening module or course on the program. And if you succeed in that, then you get entry onto the program, whatever your academic background. We have a number of pathways and specialisms so that learners can decide during the degree where they want to specialize, whether it's AI or games development or what have you. So those are all features that we built in from the start to break down barriers to access. And I think that was our approach to being learner first at the time. I think things are changing. Student expectation is changing quite rightly. So we're looking at the moment about what the future holds. The thing is, I mean, with a program like that, we've got 5,000 or so students on it. You've got to find a sweet spot between flexibility and scalability. And that's not straightforward to do. So you need a very intentional, very fine-grained model, I think, at the outset. If, as you grow, you want to preserve the flexibility that's important, while also making it work operationally at really big scale. And I'm sure we can talk more about that. But I think, so our thinking at the moment about designing the next iteration of the program is really about how to do both those things at once, how to get to the next level of scale, but how to take some of our learning about breaking down barriers to access and how to reinterpret what we're calling today learner first. But, I think for the future, we're really interested in increasing the flexibility that students have to curate their own pathway through degrees. So it's a kind of version of stackability, but from inside of the program, personalized curricula, that sort of thing. So we've learned a lot in the, 4 years since that program launched. And we're thinking afresh about how to increase that flexibility while improving kind of scalability as well.
Right. And as we think of the numbers we want to enable, it's interesting because we want to enable all these millions of numbers, but at the heart of it, it's the learners. So how do you do that at scale while ensuring the experience for the learner is really kind of impeccable? Building off of that, so Rajiv, we just launched about the first cohort of the BITS Bachelors of Computer Science. I would say that, BITS took a pretty bold step, as Sam talks about the experience inside of the program, 5,000 plus learners and flexibility. I'd love for you to shine the light on how you've kind of implemented some learner first parts of it. And it's quite bold because as we know, the BITS BSCCS doesn't require learners to apply for the BITSAT, which is a pretty bold statement to make. So talk to us a little bit about what makes the degree learner first. What made you all make this bold move?
Let me also reiterate, okay, the fact that University of London, Sam had done this, a few years back, I think also gave us a lot of inspiration when we were setting out on, maybe our reasons were different, but the fact that somebody had created a flexible model and had also run it at a certain level of scale did give us the confidence. My sense is, the idea when we were thinking of doing this degree was to, one, create something which people really wanted. Sometimes this looks a very simplistic statement because you can say, lakhs and thousands of people are, they require computer science degree. So let's create one that is really responding to the requirement. But we recognize the fact that's not the kind of response that we want to do. We understood that there is a huge diversity, of learners out there who want to pursue a domain of their choice. And so at least at the top level, we knew that what were the domains in demand, but we didn't know, the kind of expectations different people had. And we wanted to create something which was not meeting homogeneous expectations, but something which can actually answer needs of different segments. For example, in computer science, this is the first BSc computer science that we launched. We discovered there was a huge segment, within the country who had not done maths in high school, but did not want to, not drop their dreams of, pursuing a career in computers or study computer science. Now, how do you help a segment like that? We also, there is this huge startup culture today in the country, and there are people who are right after high school or within high school itself. They are getting into, innovating new businesses, starting their own companies, but they don't want to stop their higher education. So there was a requirement. How do you really help a segment which is like that? And then, of course, there are the usual, aspects about limited seats in a brick and mortar place, but people still wanted to study at a top institute and do a, high demand domain. In fact, we also found something very interesting. People wanted to do not just one degree, but 2 degrees. I think Thiru just talked about somebody wants to take 2 years, okay, to do a degree. And here is another set of people who think and feel that they should be doing 2 degrees, simultaneously. Now, we had to respond to it, because if we had just responded to it traditionally, I think that would not really be justifying the learner first, learner centricity of our plans. So, for example, we wanted to respond to the segment which said, I had stopped learning maths in class 11th and 12th. But why you barring me to do my, higher education? So we actually looked at professors sat together and looked at what precisely needs to be the prerequisite. Should the prerequisite be some kind of a, board examination, which is conducted from various schools? Or is it about learning something and demonstrating to us that they have that knowledge? So we literally figured out what precisely is that curriculum. We also found out a lot of open resources, which gave an option for people to study even outside the formal schooling system. So we recommended those paths to the learners. And then remember, we are a university. We also have to find out evidence of, whether they have learned the prerequisites or not. And we created a separate, maths qualifier test. And I'm very happy to say there are today, significant number of people who came in, who have either not studied mathematics or were not good in maths in high school. They were able to get into a computer science degree and are pursuing their dreams just because we created this little option. So similarly, people who are pursuing 2 degrees, how do you really provide them the flexibility? A typical semester in India would means doing 6 courses in a semester. You also have to pursue the program in a certain timeline. Now, how would a person who's doing 2 degrees, one on campus, another, let's say, online, would be able to, address the requirements of 2-degree programs? So again, there was flexibility created, whether it was assessments, whether it is number of courses, people want to choose paths they want to create. So a lot of these, things were done in our program to ensure that these different segments, were able to find out, what they precisely require to, get this opportunity to pursue this degree program. So diverse requirements, but diverse responses also as far as the degree design goes from our end.
Right. And Rajiv, you and I were talking about this the other day. Just recently, I met one online BITS computer science learner, and she is enrolled in an on-campus law undergraduate and in the online BITS computer science bachelor simultaneously. She wants to be a fighter pilot. That's the kind of, and she's 18 years old, like that's the kind of learners and the life choices, coming back to the obsession around choices that we want to be able to support and enable. Thiru, I see you nodding and responding. You started with flexibility and adaptability, learnability. Lean in, share
Rupal, I'm very happy. Rajiv, big thumbs up to you. Wonderful to hear that, because I think these are things which definitely need to be brought into the higher education space. Really, really happy to hear what you just said. I only also request that when you look at dual degrees, don't look at it as only online and offline as two separate. Even in offline, can you still do 2 degrees where I can attend a few semester classes, but I know I learned it well. I am able to demonstrate it. Like you said, right? Assessment is a kind of indicator of testing the skills. And then if I can actually go and attend, like just if you look at the movie 3 Idiots, where the character actually goes and sits in 3 different classes and observes the learning, right? So those are the things which will also be great. But the reason why I was nodding happily, Rupal, is I'm really excited, because if BITS Pilani is doing this, I think it will set the tone for a lot of other higher education spaces, and partnering obviously with Coursera and the online education provider supporters. I think the possibilities are really good. And also, I think the story also should be in the sense, if you are looking at a 4-year degree, I may have started with something, and in 2 years, I have realized that I may want to do something else. How do you still allow that kind of flexibility? Because the market is changing. I may have seen something else exciting me. I am really happy to hear this. That's the reason why I was nodding, and it augurs well, really, if you're able to take it forward.
Sure.
Great. And then Professor Deb, coming to you, as you're launching the online PGDM by SPJIMR today, right? On the one hand, of course, we've heard of ULLO and BITS and the progress that they've made, and Thiru's kind of response to that. On the flip side, are there things that you're anxious about? This is going to be online to get into SPJIMR. It's very competitive on campus. You have to do the CAT. You have 20,000 plus people who apply, about only less than 200 get in. Is there some part of this which is more gray that makes you a little bit anxious, and how are you thinking about it? And what would you say to higher ed leaders, maybe in business or tech, who are anxious about the quality? What's going on in your mind?
Wonderful. This, I think, is a question we have been debating, discussing, but I'll tell you a story. The story goes back to 2020, early 2020, when we set up, campus, facilities for these COVID infections and stuff. And we had interacted with a doctor from a nearby hospital, set up a facility inside campus. And while in the evening talking to the doctor, he was telling, I'm super busy. I have my practices and I'm a fantastic doctor. But I want to, set up something of my own. And is there a possibility SPJIMR allows us, people like us to come inside and do some program which is of rigor? And I can't, basically physically come and do sessions. So while I do practice, can there be a possibility that I can also do such a program. Second story goes back a couple of years before COVID, even when we were interacting with some of our participants, and I got to know there are cases where, brilliant, talented women, they had to leave jobs. In Indian setup, I'm sure some of you might be knowing. So post-marriage, because of childbirth, because of family restrictions, they had to leave job. And then there within those women, it's an urge to come back and hit the deck hard. But there is nothing that can support them. Traveling with kids, leaving kids there to Mumbai and doing this program at SPJIMR is tough. Even if they can qualify, they can't come. So those are, some of the stories that basically inspires us as an institution to, go ahead and do something which is like PGDM online. And we're trying to bring in a lot of flexibility, questioning our own way of looking at, education. That's where the learners first, which is a service perspective, So how do we help people who really need us and an institution like us? As far as the quality is concerned, today the whole understanding of raw material quality is changing. It's your learnability, like exactly Thiru said a few minutes back. It's about whether you are willing to learn, and that fire can land you at many places. So this is what SPJIMR are looking at basically while thinking about this program.
Right. Professor Deb, I really appreciate it. I think I often look at what I do as serving learners around the world. It's not transforming lives, et cetera, et cetera. It's really serving the service of learners. And then bringing it to you, Sam, just building off of that a little bit. You talked a little bit about the access and flexibility you've built so far. And you talked about, offering credit for Google IT and all of these other certificates. So pivot a little bit about what does the future hold? What are you seeing? Why offer stackability and credit for all of these industry certificates for the bachelors of computer science? And what does the future hold?
I think, first of all, you mentioned sort of serving the needs of learners. We have learner stories now on platform where they start off with auditing an open course. They may do a specialization that may pique their interest. They may then go on to do a professional certificate that gets them into a degree, and then they can go on automatically to a postgraduate degree, all on the same platform, but from different providers all around the world, from a start where they don't necessarily have to have a traditional academic background. So zooming out from individual courses and individual degrees, you can see there that there is a transformative learner journey that's possible on platform, but from across many different providers. And if you kind of extend the logic of that, then you can imagine a world not far away where a learner can pick and choose, pick and mix different bits from different universities, and perhaps even stack credit across those different providers to assemble an award or a series of awards that matches to their chosen career pathway. And that's really powerful, especially if you wrap it in a kind of skills diagnostic framework as well. So I think, hope, suspect that the next phase really is not just stacking into degrees, but also unbundling degrees themselves. We've got so much intellectual capital locked away in these degrees, some of which we open out into open content. But I'd want a student to be able to say, okay, this is what I know how to do now. This is what I want to know how to do. This is the job that I'm aiming for. Now, what learning journey can I assemble from all these different sources in a kind of curated pathway that gets me where I want to go? Now, there's all sorts of age-old cultural and regulatory and technical barriers between where we are now and that future. But I can just see that they're starting to come down. You know, we're starting to talk about different kinds of collaborations between organizations, putting the learner first. And I just wonder if we end up there. So going from stacking into awards into kind of unbundling awards, and I guess in a way breaking the kind of monopoly hold that universities have over their students. That's really learner first, you know. It changes the dynamic and switches the dynamic entirely. And then the other thing to say is, I suppose, that with the leaps and bounds in generative AI, the possibilities finally for truly adaptive learning at higher degree level, surely does come into play, you know, and raises questions about whether really we are going to be serving them content and learning, or whether we're going to be helping them to curate their own adaptive content and learning pathways. It may switch very profoundly. And you know, you can view these technological advances as a crisis in assessment, or you can view it as an opportunity to rethink the fundamentals of assessment and what we're asking students to demonstrate. You know, in the UK, we're dreadfully obsessed with measuring inputs, you know, learning hours and so on and so forth. But measuring outputs, learning outcomes, is what we're really here to do. So, you know, it may be that we bring back and refashion for the digital age things like work-based learning, where, you know, you do your professional learning at work and then you evidence it to the higher education provider, and show that you can evidence that you're worthy of a particular award. And so those are all learner first approaches. And we're not quite there on those yet, but I can, you know, we can move it in that direction if we're all so minded.
Right. Really interesting. And I was just wondering when ChatGPT comes up in this conversation, and I see it's come right about the halfway mark. So Sam, well done. And so Thiru, I want to actually pivot to you. In one of our conversations, you actually said that if you know, one would ask you where academia and industry can go together, you said your wish would be for academia to not be the enforcer of education, but the orchestrator of education. To me, what Sam is saying actually sounds like that's your wish coming true. And I want you to respond to that, but I also want you to reflect on, you know, SPJIMR is creating this online MBA, BITS is creating this incredible online Bachelor's Computer Science, University of London is doing it incredibly. Do you look at it as different when you look at hiring people? Do you look at the on-campus students different from online? How would you respond to Sam and reflect on how do you look at hiring these folks?
I think I reflect on what Sam said is exactly what I think is the need of the day. I think like what Rajiv and basically Deb said, right? It is exactly that we want to hear. The learner centricity being driven. Are we asking the right questions to learners? And Sam articulated it well. I'm pretty sure with generative AI coming in, the quality of learning, the quality of coaching and personalized adaptive learning, as well as different pedagogical styles that will emerge for different students, which is hyper-personalization. I think that is definitely bound to happen. So I'm really happy to hear what Sam said, right? I think, and it is not just, to be frank, only for the higher education, right? I run the corporate university for my own company. And within the company, we are already thinking about how do we change the rules of game as far as lifelong learning is concerned, what different pedagogical elements, styles will come in, depending on the student's mood of the day. A student in this case is obviously the employee, but depending on the mood of the day, depending on the style of learning they want, can I basically bring a quality educator, which is possibly an AI assistant, and then intelligently bring in the actual educator and amplify the ability for people to learn. So I'm really happy on that part. Your question around does Infosys or any other company look at hiring people differently because they're coming from an online education or offline university education? I don't think we will be looking at it that way. To be frank, over the last few years, already there's a tremendous shift that has happened where we are actually hiring people based on their ability to demonstrate their learning and their application of that learning, as well as the concept of learnability itself, right? So when we do that test, if you see at Infosys in the last couple of years, the number of students we hired in an offline, not from a regular campus kind of a placement to a completely online driven placement, without worrying about what the students' credentials are, I think it's already happening, right? The only advantage obviously is if for example, my wish list, again, this is my personal wish list, is irrespective of whether it is offline or online learning, if there is a concept of some kind of a talent dossier that universities can think about, showcasing what exactly the student has learned, not just the final results, I think that will actually help us change the way we hire people, right? See, sometimes what happens is when we hire on a particular day for a particular test, with a particular test, it may be an off day for someone. That doesn't mean that they are not good or they don't deserve the chance. And unfortunately, we miss out good talent. But let us say if we have a good interoperable credential or dossier exchange ecosystem where the educational universities or educational institutions are able to tell me that, you know, this student over the period of last 3 years or 4 years has been doing like this in different learning, their aptitude, their attitude, their assessments, and because of which the university says, you know, no matter what the person does on a given day doesn't reflect, those things actually will change the game as far as industries will hire, the way they hire. Otherwise, today, we don't differentiate, but maybe we are also missing out on good candidates because of one bad day for whatever reason that may happen, right? So that is where my request for higher education institutions is, can you also think about, while you are doing all these changes, have a kind of an dossier which basically chronicles the entire journey of a student, and which actually will be a good conduct certificate. Instead of giving one certificate saying good aptitude, the dossier will actually help industries to do that. There's only one additional change I would request is like what they are partnering with Coursera. Maybe when you are doing this, if you have a good infusion of industry participation, industry partnership, and industry educators or industry experts coming and teaching. And one other thing which, if you remember, Rupal, I talked to you was on, there's also sometimes I see the internships being done only in a particular semester and everything. If there is a way you can actually change the internships where it is over all the 8 semesters, or it is not just only in the last 7th and 8th semester, but start right from semester 1, where you are learning, you are doing internships, and you are participating in actual practical learning. I think these are additional asks that I have, other than answering to your questions that you had.
Right. Rajiv, I'm going to pass on to you because I know work integrated is pretty much what you've thought about for many years. And I know you've been thinking about internships. Thiru, I just want to say, like, so many interesting points there. And what I keep hearing from you is, how do you measure based on skills? How do you hire based on skills, and not what a learner, as Professor Dev also said, showed up on that specific day, or their context or their background? How do you constantly see their skills and give choice and opportunity? So many great ideas. Rajiv, what comes to mind?
Yeah. So I was, frankly, when Thiru was speaking, I was feverishly writing some very good ideas. And in fact, most of the meetings I attend with the industry leaders like that, we come out with ideas, and then of course, university has a challenge to make those ideas into a reality. Some we are able to do that. Some remain, work in progress, or things that we really want to do. So I'm frankly, this whole industry bit, which Thiru mentioned, it's extremely important, I think, because if I look at one common element among people who are applying for a program here and also in work integrated learning programs, this whole career orientation, job orientation, to be able to demonstrate to their employers or to the industry what they have learned, and that's something which is relevant for them, is becoming prime. One recent example I can give is, we worked with a very large, again, an IT company of India, and who wanted to go, much earlier in the education system to start collaborating with the university to create something which they require for the next 10 years. So it was also not just about, getting somebody who's first job ready. The idea was, can we collaborate to create a 10-year, 15-year, kind of a, requirement of a kind of talent with the IT industry required. And we were surprised because we literally started working on the curriculum, not just from the first job point of view. We started working on the curriculum basis, the kind of traits that they shared with us, which was missing normally among people coming from universities and who have spent many, many years in the industry. And we realized that, when you deeply collaborate like that, magic happens. So we actually created a BSc program, which was not just a computer science program, but an interdisciplinary program. So the company said, we want people to be able to design things, the whole learnability aspect. So a program called Design and Computing, which was a combination of humanities, things like philosophy. Imagine symbolic logic is being taught first before you, teach how to code. So many of those things like art appreciation, so which are normally not linked to, a technical curriculum, were possible because, the industry and the academia, in our case, got together and created something which is really, helpful for the learner, not just at the first job stage and also in the future job stage. Thiru, I'll just quickly share, about 3 years back, we also met industry leaders to figure out, for a range of, for example, IT industry itself is so diverse. There are product companies, there are services companies, there are e-commerce companies. So what kind of skills do they require for next 4 years, 5 years? And going back in a very industry style, doing a roadmap. So even the commissioning of market research mimicked the way the industry would do. So I think that kind of, I would say collaboration, and sometimes nothing wrong in learning, from the other end who perhaps does these things better. So sometimes I feel that both the industry and the universities, also have to kind of shed their little walls that we have made and say, this is something the industry is good at. Industry has to see this is something which the university is good at, and exchange very openly and create something which will, really help the learners. So I think that's what we have tried to do, even with the Coursera BSc that we have done. There are elements of that, Rupal, you're aware of, from the industry that we have, taken to the system itself. So it is work in progress, but of course, strides are being taken, every day.
Right. I feel like this conversation is trending towards a place where we have action items to follow up in meetings after this. So it's incredible. I see there's a lot of there's a lot of audience questions that are beginning to come in, and I'm gonna start sharing them with you. It's incredible to see some of these questions come in. The first one, Sam, I might give to you. It comes from Art Hill. Can you help define flexibility in more detail? The attendee says that I find that people have varying definitions while referring to education. What kind of flexibility are students really looking for?
It's a really good question, and there's many answers to it, some of which are quite long, but I'll venture a short one. I always find it's worth stepping back and reminding ourselves that online education itself is learner first and flexible in a way that education largely didn't used to be. We've been doing distance education for a long time, but the basic principle that we're bringing the learning to the student rather than asking the student to come to the learning is flexible. You can study for a degree with a university on the other side of the world, wherever you are, at whatever stage of life you're at. If you're rearing kids, if you're busy at work, if you have a disability which would prevent you coming to campus on a traditional face-to-face degree. those are all versions that, it's independent of time and space and location. And that's the inherent flexibility of this mode of education. So there's all sorts of other kind of versions of flexibility, but that's the baseline, Then there's flexibility around what you learn, what order you learn it in, how long you want to take to learn it, whether you want to vary your pace of study. Those are all further layers of flexibility. And all of those are possible and evident in the mode of education that we're all doing now, in ways that are fundamentally different to a traditional face-to-face course. So I think from first principles, that would be how I think about flexibility. There are then further degrees of flexibility if you're talking about personalized learning and so on and so forth. But in terms of the sort of bedrock, it's probably those elements.
Right. Sam, I feel like 5 years from today, we're going to be looking back, and the ULL Bachelor's of Computer Science feels like it's going to be all kinds of building blocks and Lego blocks. Professor Deb, I'm going to kind of ask the next panelist question for you, because I know that's something SPJIMR's been thinking about. Radhika asks, how could universities change assessment formats when the larger accrediting bodies board exams have not moved to allow for flexibility in assessments? I know you may not have a perfect answer, but I know that's definitely top of mind. So how would you answer that?
Yeah. So, the accrediting bodies never interfere in terms of what exact evaluation component you are using. They generally give you a overarching frameworks, and that these are the things that you require. Now, with the changes happening in the last 2.5 years, what the regular university physical face-to-face settings also, we are noticing that those evaluation components cannot continue for long, because of availability of ChatGPT, because of availability of a lot of other aspects. Therefore, the evaluation per se has to change, and that's where your evaluation components should look at what you have learned, whether you have the ability to learn, then just understanding whether you are able to produce what you have learned in the textbooks. So that way, when you look at the traditional systems, the universities I know in India are also gearing up very fast to change these whole evaluation mechanisms. Because that's a threat that they have observed, they're noticing.
Right. And what I'm hearing from you is it's possible. And it's possible if we think a little bit more. Thiru, the next question is really for you, and it feels like a very poignant question. So Jatin Kamboj asks, how valuable is obtaining a first degree via online learning in terms of opening doors and advancing careers in corporate jobs that typically require a traditional or technical degree? So essentially, if you're looking at someone in the hiring pipeline and their first degree is an online degree, well, how do you rate them as an employer?
I think, unfortunately, till about last year, I think degree was still a minimum requirement that we had. And but now, if you look at it, the debate is slowly moving towards skills rather than degrees. And in that context, I think, including Infosys, many companies have already started hiring based on their ability to demonstrate their skills. So in that context, I think my personal view is, in a couple of years from now, there will be a whole lot of change that will happen, where a lot of focus will be exactly like Professor Deb said, right? We will basically use a combination of assessments, and the other request I had, if we are able to get additional element of an learner's attitude, aptitude, and their continuous learning, whether it is directly from a university or from any learning platform, whether if they are using Coursera, and I'm able to get a view of how they learned. I think this is what will determine hiring priorities, rather than basically going for just a degree. Because slowly, and we are already seeing it, right? Many of the employees that joins, especially IT industry, they are not necessarily doing what they are learning in their degree, even though a lot of good modules or good programs have come in work integrated programs and everything, but more or less they are in computer science kind of discipline. Whereas we have mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and even non-engineers who are able to do equally good job of programming as well as getting into solving problems using software solutions. So I am pretty sure the world is changing, and at Infosys we have always been talking about how we want to hire for skills and learnability, and not having a degree going forward may not necessarily mean that you will not get a job. You will definitely get a job as long as you are able to demonstrate. The advantage of degree, to be frank, for us, why it is important, whether it is online or offline, is the higher education institutions which are granting that, they actually make sure that a lot of these elements of learnability, team kind of aspects, or understanding discipline, all of those additional elements which are important, they are actually honed in a campus setting which the universities provide. So that is one additional advantage that we see. But otherwise, world is definitely changing, and my view is in few years from now, this will no longer be a debate. I think it is only about hiring based on skills and based on ability and learnability.
Right. I think we're graduating towards a kind of a end caption of this conversation, really learnability, adaptability, flexibility. Rajiv, the next question I'll pass on to you, and then maybe Sam, if you want to weigh in on this. It feels like it's probably top of mind for a lot of people. Vivian says that very interesting discussion on learner first degrees. Could the panelists recommend how AI can be used to design an adaptive framework for online learner first degrees? Rajiv, Sam, what's top of mind?
So certainly, adaptive learning for quite some time, has been the focus of learning designers. There is no doubt, if a learning system can adapt to a learner's requirement, the style of learning, what they want to learn, when they want to learn. And AI has a lot of promise. But I think what we are right now seeing, let's once again use the term Chatterjee, since being, in vogue for quite some time now. But I think there is a mixed feeling right now about, how it would really help in learning, because we are yet to see mature use cases. However, I remain optimistic that there will be a shift from fear of AI, into the education system to how can we really adopt AI for adaptive learning. That should happen in the coming years, and things can change. So I remain optimistic. How can we do this? Use cases, I think nobody today can say, at least these times, if this is the best way to do that. People are experimenting, but very soon we should be able to see, models coming up where AI can help in the education experience. Of course, from BITS Pilani side, we'll also continue to, work on that. But I think it'll take a few years before we can say, this is precisely is the use case where AI can be best used for, from a learning purpose.
Right. Sam, I see you thinking. Say more.
It's a big old question. And I think anyone who says they have the answer isn't telling the truth yet, because we're at the early stages of discovery here. I do think that it is going to change everything, though, because thinking about it, and from my early experiments in it, every step along the way, from conceiving a degree, writing the specifications for a degree, developing learning designs, developing content, asking students to do things in the degree, interactions with an AI, through to assessment, and then, of course, through to what skills we're going to be measuring in a kind of AI disrupted world in 5 years' time anyway, out in the world, So I think it is going to change everything. I can't say exactly how. It's tremendously exciting, because there will now be a period of intense innovation and discovery, and lots of failures and lots of learning. But I've been doing this since 1999, and since 1999, however better we've gotten at it, we still have web pages, and we do something and then you click next, and then you do something else, and then you click next, and it's sequences of those things. I think finally that can change. There is no doubt that it's an extremely rich learning tool, and that you can, if we equip learners with the right literacies, we can help them to learn in a way that doesn't look like traditional teaching. Perhaps it's something else. I think it's going to change the way we think about teaching, certainly, but I can't say how yet. So
sounds like there's a bunch of patient optimism in the room when it comes to ChatGPT. We have about 3 minutes left, and I'm going to ask perhaps my last question and then kind of have all of you weigh in really quickly. We talked a lot about learner first and all of the incredible things that we're doing in academia and industry. The root of it all is also building coalitions in industry through or at institutions of faculty, of change makers in order to actually bring the change. For everyone who's dialing in, who's in the audience, who's at the precipice of this change, who's thinking about wanting to make this change in their companies or in their institutions, what's your one word of advice how to take on this journey? Thiru, let's start with you, and we'll go around the room.
I think the first way to look at it is everyone should start thinking and behaving like they are learners themselves, right? Whether they are administrators, whether they are educators, faculty. I think what happens is if I basically go and tell certain things as if I'm teaching and not necessarily showing that I am also learning, because there's so much of change coming in. I think that's the first thing I would say, right? Irrespective of what role you play, what persona you are, demonstrating the fact that you are yourself a lifelong learner and you are learning a lot of things and you will learn together in the process. That's the first thing. Second thing is, I like the way you said, right? We need to be the change makers. I think especially the persons who are of influence, especially in the higher education or the university world, as well as in the corporate world, how do we make sure that we are actually a change maker? In the sense, how do we showcase? Like, for example, a lot of hype is there on generative AI. I did hear the view just now, but at Infosys, we are already seeing a practical applications of how we can drive adaptive learning in the flow of learning. And as Professor Sam said, you don't have to always click the next button. The conversational style of learning comes in. Different pedagogies come in. So how do you use them, experiment them with a caveat saying that we will kind of instead of a complete public full-fledged transformer kind of thinking, limit that context, limit it in a safe environment kind of scenario, and be the change maker in embracing technology, embracing disruptions, and basically showcase that this is how we are going to drive. I think that's the key. That's what I would like to look at. And the one more important point, Rupal, you said is this is not going to be solved by one participant or one stakeholder, right? Industry, academia, government, parents, everyone have to kind of collaborate, because we are in a very exciting phase of education where skills will be important, degrees will change, the way degrees are pursued and implemented will change, and everyone has to kind of play an important role in it.
Yeah, great. Professor Deb.
Yeah, I was just thinking, in lines of Thiru. So what happens basically is, as a faculty, the moment you start thinking that you are a teacher in a setup like this, that's the worst thing that you can do to yourself. So it's a facilitating role, and you are equally learning from the participants as they are learning from you, possibly. So that mindset brings in service perspective that I talked about a few minutes back. How can I help you, in a process that both of us learn together and excel? So that's the journey, and it has to be in that direction.
Right. Rajiv.
Just one thing, Rupal. I think we all have to start questioning our, deep held beliefs about what's possible and what's not possible. There are a lot of things happening around to take inspiration from. Not knowing about technology does not mean is equal to something being impossible. So I think educators have to be learners. I think you also mentioned that. We have to learn far more about what could be possible and then create an ecosystem, which will make learner first, degrees possible.
Right, and Sam.
We've had a fascinating conversation today, haven't we? We've actually kind of sketched out a vastly different future for higher education, where industry and higher education and learners form a kind of triangle. And to get from where we are to there, I guess the key thing for me is collaboration. So collaborating beyond your own institution, beyond your own discipline, beyond your own domain. I think it's through those kinds of conversations that we'll actually invent and test and experiment with these forms of education.
Right, and if I summarize, I think one thing really comes to mind, folks, just listening to all of you, that if we want to go fast, just go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's what I'm really hearing in all of you. And I know that I and we, all of us in the room, really want to go far here, the learner first perspective. So excited to take this journey together. Thank you, panelists, and thank you, audience, for attending this conversation, asking so many thoughtful questions. I know I couldn't ask all of the questions, but I really enjoyed this conversation and hope this is just a beginning of a longer collaboration amongst everyone in the audience and everyone in the panel. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Look forward to seeing you next year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.